Hi guys, welcome to STCUK, the UK's fastest growing soft tip dedicated channel. Remember, as always, like us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, give us a follow on YouTube as well. So, today I'm going to be getting my tips out for you. And that's right, I did say tips. These kind of tips. Now, as we know, there are literally tens and tens of these kind of tips in the marketplace. And a question we see very, very frequently is, which one's the best? Well, hopefully I'm going to answer that for you today. I've been able to test 7 different types. Why 7? Well, I only had the patience for 7 if I'm brutally honest. But I think I've pretty much got it covered here. We have a nice range of different manufacturers, different price points and different styles. The tips I tested were Condor Zero Stress, Designer Budget Tips, WINMAUTRITON Advanced, HARROWS Soft Tips, Target Pixel Tips, COSMO Fit Point Plus, finally L-Style Premium LIPPOINTS. So the first one we're going to take a look at is the Designers. You get approximately 50 tips in a bag. These tips are 60p for a bag of 50, which works out at about roughly a penny a tip. So these are really at the end of the budget scale. So these are about as budget as you can probably get. You get them in a nice little plastic bag, nothing special there. Let's open them up. Let's take a look at a tip and see what we're dealing with. So you get a nice tip. There's nothing particularly clever about it. It's very smooth. It seems quite long, is probably my first impression when I took this out of the bag. And being a cheap tip, it is unfortunately quite flexible, which you probably don't want, as you want those darts to stand proud in the board. And you may get a breakage or an easy bendage with this. But that's the first impression of the Designer. 52 a bag, 60p a bag, works out at, you know, a penny a tip. So that's your Designer. Next in line in our lineup today are the WINMAUTRITON Advanced. These are 52 a box approximately. They come in at £1.45 for a box, and points per tip is 3p a tip. Again, nice packaging if you're into that sort of thing. Looks quite premium. Nice name, I suppose, if you want to go that deep into it. Sounds a bit like a transformer. Triton Advanced. Let's take one out and let's take a look at it. So, first impressions, very much like the Designer. Again, it's quite a thin tip. We do have a little bit of grip on the end there, a little bit of a ridging. What can that do for you? Well, in my experience, that can be a break point. However, this feels quite sturdy there. They do feel quite sturdy in terms of bendage, although actually they do seem to feel like they bend right at the tip as they taper out. Like I said, premium packaging, almost similar to the Target Pixel, if you ask me. Obviously at a cheaper price. Again, this is probably considered a budget tip, but there we have it. That is our first impression of the Triton Advanced. Up next now, we have the HARROWS. First impressions of the HARROWS. The box is a little bit battered, but that's clearly because I've opened it. It comes in a nice cardboard box. Nothing special about that. The HARROWS, you get a pack size of approximately 30. The pack size even, put my teeth back in, is 90p. And that works out at about 3p per tip. So if I get one out for you now, I shall pull one out. We can see, I know it's a white table and it's a white tip, but I'm just going to place that in my hand there. It's very smooth. First impressions, it's quite large. It's quite a large tip, quite thick as well, quite sturdy. Again, you know, this is clearly a budget tip. However, it is not a bad tip on first impressions. Like I said, it's quite thick. When you compare it, the point, it doesn't taper to a point. It's a lot more rounded at the top there. You can see there's not so much any grip, but what there is a couple, if you can just about see that, there's indentations there. So whether that's going to help you with finger placement, I'm not quite sure. But we'll discuss that a little bit further when I give you my verdict, having thrown it. That there is the Harrows. Next in line for a grilling is the Target Pixel Tips. Now these are a pack size of 50. Now we're right in the middle of our budget now. So we've gone from the first three, which were, I would consider, budget tips. You're now in the sort of middle ground. So these are a pack size of 50. They are £2.40 for a pack of 50, which works out at roughly 5p a tip. So still not really breaking the bank, middle of the road. These are, I have to admit, my go-to tip, or were. I don't want to give too much away until the end of the video, but these were my go-to tip, purely because these are what I got with my darts. I throw the Rob Cross Gen 1 darts, and these were what came with it. So let's open it up and take a look inside and see what we are dealing with. Now, one of the cons of this Target packaging is that they are very difficult to get into. Maybe I'm just being a bit weak and pathetic, so I'm going to get a pencil and I'm going to absolutely stab into it, yeah, like that. Like a kid opening Christmas presents. No finesse there, just rip it open. So let's grab one out. Again, apologies it's a white tip, but I'm going to put it on my hand. First impressions, I mean, like I said, I've played with these many times before. They're a nice looking tip, if that's what you're into, if you're into aesthetics. A little bit of grip there at the bottom, very sturdy, a little bit shorter than some of the tips. But yeah, it's good for front grippers, I guess, with the grip on the front there. It's very sturdy, very inflexible, which is what you want. And yeah, there you go. That is the Target Pixel, first impression. Next in line, we're starting to get into the premium side of things now, and we have the COSMO Fit Point Plus. Very nice packaging, again, if that's what you're into. Little description of it on the side there. These are, of course, Japanese, made by COSMO. One of the things that slightly annoyed me and made me a little bit dubious is that it comes looking like an Airfix kit and that you have to snap these off yourself. Now, maybe it's just me, but I kind of feel like I shouldn't be having to snap these off myself, and that this is maybe someone who's been a bit lazy in the factory and thought, you know what, we might try and get away with this. However, this is how they come presented to us, so this is how I will review them. So I'm going to take this out and show you a little bit more of the Fit Point Pluses. So I'll take one out. It's a bit difficult. As you can see, I've already taken 3 off there, but let's just take another one off for you. So like I said, it comes with this Airfix style kit that you have to snap off yourself. For anyone who's not familiar with an Airfix kit, that is probably quite a UK thing. They were model planes that we were tortured with as children by our parents to make, and they came very much like this. So you had to snap them off, and as you can see, the one thing that I was dubious of is the sort of leftovers from snapping. However, they snap very cleanly, and these are starting to look like a very premium style point. They are slightly tapered, so as you can see there, we have one width and then it tapers again into a second width. Quite flexible, actually, for a premium point. Once you get past this ridge here, it does start to flex quite a bit. Whether that's going to affect it when we come to play, I don't know, but certainly I would expect it to be a little bit more rigid for this point itself. As I've said, this is a pack size of 50. It is £2.40, which again works out at about 5p a tip. So that is the COSMO Fit Point Plus. Now, the second most expensive that we have reviewed today is the Made in Japan CONDORS Zero Stress. And we all love Zero Stress, don't we? And they come in a Zero Stress plastic bag. which is great. They are a pack size of 40 and these are £3.60, I believe, which is starting to get on the expensive side if it is that kind of thing that you're thinking about. That works out about 9p for every tip that you use. Comes in a plastic bag, nothing fancy there, no frills. So let's take it out and have a good look at one of them. So, as you can see, zero stress tips, very similar to the Fit Point Pluses in looks. And the one thing I do quite like about these is that they have a very neat little hole. Now, for any of you who don't know what that hole is for, that hole is simply there for tightening the soft tips on. So once you've screwed them in and you want to make sure they're tight enough, you get the other soft tip, you put it in there like that, and you twist until it's really tight. Now, I probably wouldn't recommend doing that at 9p a tip, because what you'll probably end up doing is you'll probably end up bending this one that you're trying to that you're tightening it with. So whilst I think it's good just for nipping it up, if you're just standing there playing with your tips, which is not a euphemism, it's quite a good idea. As I've said, it's quite a nice tip. Looks good. There's no grip on it, if that's what you're into. It is ridged ever so slightly, but I think that's probably just for strength. Very rigid, not a long tip either, but nevertheless, these are the premium tips. This is the top end of the price bracket now, and that is the Condor Zero Stress. So here we have the Rolls-Royce, the Ferrari of tips themselves, the premium L-style lip points in a very nice plastic bag with gold lettering. As you can see, nothing fancy there, made in Japan. Now these come in at a pack size of 30 and a staggering price of £4.20. That, if you convert that to my little ratio of points per tip, that is a staggering, a mind-blowing 14p per tip. So can be quite expensive if you start snapping these all over the place. Let's take one out, let's have a look at them. As you would expect, these are a premium point and the detail on them is quite staggering for a little point. As you can see, we have some grip on the actual end of the point. I'm guessing that's to hold it into the board. We have some grip down near the base for you front grippers, and for some reason they've gone crazy with the thread as well. So, you know, like I said, they've really gone to town on these. This is a little mini work of art and the price reflects that. However, will it stand up to the price when I start throwing it in 30 games on the board? So I'm just going to take you through now exactly how I've tested these and what I'm looking for. But yeah, there it is. That's the most premium, the most expensive, the premium L-style lip point. So how did I go about testing them? Well, I put a cheeky little question out into the Target Nexus owners group a while back now, and I asked everyone in there, how often do you change your tips and what influences you to change your tips? I had answers from until they break, until they bend out of shape, or simply until people just become tired of them. So that got me thinking, how am I going to test these and give them a full and thorough road test? Game ready, take them to the limit. So I thought, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take one set of each of the type of tips that we've got. I'm going to do 30 games, and that's 30 online games. So I had no idea who I was playing. I literally screwed the tips in and just kept playing and playing and playing until somebody either got fed up of me, won game and ran away on me, or whatever. But the point of the matter is that I did 30 games exactly with each type of tip. I was looking for a range of things with these tips. I was looking at the way that they feel, the way that they screw into the soft tips, the soft tip barrels themselves, the way that they stand up, the durability of them, the way that they sit in the board. Honestly, I was very thorough with what I was doing. But hopefully we've come to a conclusion. So, which ones did I test? So up first, I had 30 games with the designer budgets. Now, if you can remember, I told you that these are the bottom end of the scale. These are the cheapest. These are the cheapest that you are ever going to find. possibly on the market that are from a reputable manufacturer. And Designer are a reputable manufacturer. I've had quite a few sets of darts from them, and they've generally been really quite good. However, when it comes to soft tips, I think that their marketing and their manufacturing department probably should go back to the drawing board. So these are what they look like after 30 games. Now, you can see 3 of them here. Unfortunately, I had to use 4 because this one, as you can see, was bent out of all proportion. I think this was probably about seven games in. I think I was going for a double, hit the side of the board, and this one just decided to give up life on me. Normally, like many, I try and bend them back into shape. However, that is the result of me trying to bend it back into shape. And no, I'm not the Incredible Hulk, and fortunately, I couldn't save this one. So yes, I had to use 4 tips with this one, but the others reasonably well. The one thing I will say about these is they are extremely difficult to remove from the board. I have no idea why, because they're extremely smooth. And I found that the longer point, which they're quite a long point, tended to destabilise my dart when I was throwing it. The dart was not flying as straight and as true as it normally would, and I sort of had to adapt my grip and throw just to make sure that the dart went straight into the board. Like I said, look, this one's even quite bent as well, but it was playable to a certain point. When you do get a bouncer or you do hit the board attempting the double, like I said, the points tend to bend very, very easily. They don't hold up well, and sometimes, in the case of this little chap here, sometimes to the point of no return. So like I said, I think I was about 7 games in and I destroyed one already. I didn't think this was a great omen. But yeah, you certainly get what you pay for with these. If you're quite happy just to throw money at soft tips and you don't want to take it too seriously, I'd say these are probably a good option. Now up next we have the WINMAUTRITONs. As you remember, these are the 2nd cheapest on the list there. And you know what? They were actually all right. They never came unscrewed from the barrels themselves. They stayed in quite nicely. Very strong, very durable. Hardly ever bent out of shape. I mean, that's 30 games. Looks pretty all right. That one's slightly got a curve to it, but again, it's not unplayable. Same with that one. That one looks pretty good. Slight bend in that, but again, no real dramas from them. No real danger. Good for front grippers with a little bit of grip there. Like I said, a bit of a surprise these. Not for me. Like I said, I tended to get a few bounce outs with these, and I've no idea why. I don't know whether I was just having a bad day with the board, but they did tend to bounce out. Now, the only thing I can think of is that they are quite thin at the end. So whether that encourages them not to stick in the board when they make impact, I don't know. But there was just a few too many bounce outs for me to actually give these any kudos. But again, no dramas with them. Good value for money. Yeah, WINMAUTRITONs, not a bad tip. Next in our list, we have the HARROWS. These are, again, quite a surprisingly good tip. Once they're in the barrel, they don't unscrew at all. They're pretty hard wearing, as you can see. So that's I only had to use 3 when I was playing for 30 games. That one's slightly bent. Again, that one's probably slightly bent. That one's not too bad. But they're not really susceptible to bending, if I'm brutally honest. They balanced really well with my dart. They are a heavier tip, I think. I mean, we're talking, nanograms or grams, but it can all unbalance a dart. But these balance with my darts really well. Great value for money, these. Like I said, they are a bit of a thicker tip on the end. So every time they hit the board, they stayed in nicely. And I think, if I remember rightly, they do bend back quite easily as well. So once you get a bounce out, or you hit that wrong double, or you don't manage to hit the double, when it's laying on the floor all feeling sorry for itself and bent out of shape, they do tend to bend back, and you can get a little bit of shelf life out of them. A real surprise for me, these. Like I said, I wasn't expecting great things from them. If I'm going to be really pernickety about this, the inconsistencies in them being made, as you can see there, that's clearly where they've come out of the manufacturing process, and that's quite a sharp little leftover from production, I think. And if you do grip front, sometimes it can unsettle you as you feel these very sharp points on the tips themselves, and I think that's a manufacturing issue. But again, budget, but a real surprise. The next tip that I am going to show you 30 games worth of use of is the Target Pixel. Now, as you'd expect, this is Target's own soft tip. I was testing it on the Nexus board, and you would have thought that Target would have built that board, all the tips, with either or in mind. And as expected, it was a good tip. It's been my go-to tip for a long time now. It removes easily from the board. Initially, however, the one thing I've always found with these is that the longer you play with them, the more supple these get and the more pliable they start to get. And even after 30 games, they are quite pliable, quite bendy. And the more bendy they get, the more difficult they are to take out of the board themselves. Another big annoyance with these, which is why I've kind of shied away from them recently, is that for some reason, and bear in mind that these are Target points, and I use Target darts. I'll just show you as quickly. I use Target darts. They seem to come unscrewed all the time, and I don't know what it is. None of the other points have really shown that to me, except these. The ones that are actually made by Target are the ones that never really stay in the barrel long enough, and you're constantly having to fiddle with them and screw them in. So not great, really. You know, if these are all you've ever known, as they were for me, then you think they're a great tip. But when you start comparing them, suddenly they actually don't really stand up very well. That said, they're a good solid tip, but when you start comparing them to others, they start to not really make the mark. Next in line after 30 games are the COSMO Fit Point Plus. If you remember, these ones came in the Airfix style package where you have to snap them off yourself. So just to take you through 30 games with these were extremely hard wearing. You'd expect that now because we're starting to get into the more expensive end of tips. They are very rigid, and you know, there's hardly any bend in them whatsoever, even after 30 games. My conclusion with these is I'd probably recommend these if you had a heavier dart. So by a heavier dart, I'm talking north of 20 grams, 20 gram barrels. I know the Nexus board can take up to 23 grams. 23 gram barrels, and when you've got a heavier barrel in a soft tip board, you do need a more rigid tip. So these would be great for that type of barrel. Cons with these, these were possibly the most difficult to remove out of the board, and it was sometimes comical at times. I was tugging at it like I was about 6 years old, like I had no strength. It was ridiculous, and I can't really work out why they were so difficult to get out. However, the only thing I can think is when you start to look at these, you can see that they're actually graduated in terms of width. So you've got one width here, you've got a second width there, and then clearly they'll never go in as far as that. But I'm wondering whether it's this ridge here that maybe made them a little bit more difficult to remove from the board. But they really were difficult to get out of the board, and by the end of it, I was just sick and tired of trying to pull them out of the board, and I was taking more effort to pull them out of the board than I really gave credence to. So due to them being so difficult to get out of the board, I wouldn't recommend these at all. Not a big fan. They're just more of an annoyance than anything else. Next in line after 30 games is the CONDOR Zero Stress. Now, these were an extremely good tip to play with. As you can see, after 30 games, they look pretty fresh. No bend in them really. Very strong. Don't unscrew from the barrel. And the one thing I did note with these is I did have a really bad bend after hitting a missed double, and it hit the plastic on the side of the board, and it was bent, you know, to the point where if it was a designer tip, it would have just gone straight in the bin. However, I did bend it back to a point, and do you know what? Looking at these now, I couldn't even tell you which one it was because it bent back so well. Never came unscrewed. Great point, really good point. I mean, we're starting to get into the more expensive points now anyway, so you kind of expect this, but these were an absolute joy to play with. Highly recommend those. And finally, the L-Style Premium Lip Points, the Rolls Royce of tips. As you would expect, solid as a rock. These didn't put a foot wrong, and for the price, I would hope not as well. Very much reinforcing the old adage of you get what you pay for, and with these you certainly do. Like I said, solid as a rock, didn't unscrew, never bent once, even with my terrible doubling out and hitting the side of the Nexus board plastic. The one thing that I could probably have a little moan about was the price, but then again, you're getting what you're paying for. You probably wouldn't need to replace these in, I don't know. I mean, this is 30 games, and they look as fresh as when they came out of the packet. Be very interested to see how long I could actually push these for. My guess is you'd probably get a good 2 or 3 times the amount that I got out of them. They don't look to break very easily. I mean, even trying to break that now, it just doesn't want to move. Very rigid. You get what you pay for with those. Great point. If you can stretch your budget to that, then I'd recommend you do, because they are a great point. So there we have it. I've taken you through what they look like, what they feel like, what they look like after 30 games. So now the conclusion, and this conclusion is probably going to get me shot down in flames. People are going to disagree. People are going to tell me I've not reviewed enough of them, or I've not reviewed their particular type of tip, and I get that. There's literally tens and tens of them out there, but out of this 7, which was a good spread, I thought, I've come to some conclusions, and I'm going to give a recommendation for 2 of them. I'm going to give a recommendation for the best budget tip, okay, and the best overall tip, regardless of price and everything else. So, drum roll please, the winner of the budget tip of the year, feels a bit like Top Gear this, is the HARROWS soft tip. As you can you see that there? Yeah, as it comes into focus. I do apologise, this is sunshine, we do get that in England. So yes, it is the HARROWS soft tip. Great tip, honestly. It's quite a large tip, it's quite big, it's quite bulky, but it does its job fabulously, and for the price of them, it's just a no-brainer. I use these with, or I've started to use these now with my boys, because as they are learning the game, clearly you're going to get them hitting occasionally the door or the edge of the board, and the durability on them is just fantastic. It's really good. So highly recommend those as the budget tip. STCUK's budget tip of the year. So, any surprises what the winner is going to be, the overall winner? Well, I am going to give a bit of a shout out to these first. And these are the CONDORS. I'd never ever come across these before. I'd never played with any of their products. Obviously, when I say played with their products, I mean played with their soft tips. I've seen their products out and about. I've seen, and I obviously play with their all-in-one. Let's grab that. I obviously play with their all-in-one flights. But in terms of tips, I've never had any experience with them at all. But they are a good tip, really good tip, and they are getting on for sort of premium. But again, I would recommend those, but they're not the eventual winner. The eventual winner is these, unfortunately. It's the most pricey on the market. If I was a car salesman and I sold you the most expensive car, you'd think I was just being a bit of a pillock, but I'm not really. You really do get what you pay for with these. Great looking tip, extremely durable, never put a foot wrong. I was really, in the end, I was just trying to find something wrong with them, and I couldn't really. So I would go ahead and say the L-Style Premium Lip Points are probably the best in the market right now. Again, don't shoot me down if you think I'm wrong. So, you've seen the conclusions. You may agree with it, you may not. Like I said, it's a very, very individual thing. Darts, especially soft tip darts, is one of those sports where the setup is, the combinations are infinite almost in what you can do. However, the one thing I would say is, not just based on my conclusions, but make sure you experiment with, especially with the tips, because I've always been a target pixel user, and as a result never even bothered to try anything else because I didn't think I needed to. Doing this has really brought some great tips to my to my hands, and as a result now I'm starting to experiment a little bit more as to what suits my dart, and like we all do, we go through phases of what we use, but the one thing I would say is please experiment. So to make this a little bit easier for you guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bag up all the unused tips that came out of the packets. So that I think there's seven different types. I'm going to take 3 tips from each of the 7 manufacturers, bag them up, and I'm going to give them away. So basically it's the first 5 comments on our YouTube channel. Comments down below, and if you comment tips, hashtag tips down below, the first 5 people that do that, I'll bag them all up and I'll send them out to you, and you can experiment to your heart's content. I hope you found this useful, guys. I know I did. Stay safe. We go again.